Dr. Natalie Metz here is probably one of the people I trust most in this community, at least, for a number of reasons. One, she has a proper medical background. So, I mean, the furthest we've taken that, personally, the two of us, is a vitamin B12 shot in the ass, right? Not everybody I would let handle needles around this area, so that's the one. And also she deeply, deeply cares about making sure everybody's doing okay in all of our various complicated explorations. She's not only a guide out to those far spaces and those complicated landscapes which we're all trying to uncover in ourselves and in the various spheres within which we play, but she's very, very, very caring about making sure that we are healthy and conscious and that we come back and that we all take care of one another. And, so thank you for all that work that you do.
Thank you.
For us. And this is maybe a slight divergence from some of the talks that you've been giving. And it's about heart and it's about vulnerability. Okay, yeah, I'll just let you go. I'm excited.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you to Josh, who I had asked last year to introduce me last year. And then this year I was thinking, did I ask Josh to introduce me? So he just agreed to do that right now. So thank you very much. So I wanted to speak a bit about vulnerability and intimacy. It seems to be something that's been very present in my life since last time we were here at Esalen. And also, I know there's a lot of it up for a lot of people in our community. And so I thought it could be nice to just have 27.57 minutes devoted to exploring that together a little bit. So I'm going to show us primarily some images to start talking about the human heart. And I came to this from the place of thinking about how the human heart is essentially this gateway into the place of intimacy and vulnerability. And I like this image, which portrays this kind of like cogs and wheels and all the amazing complexity of workings of the heart. Let's see, there we go. And so I offer this quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald. They slipped briskly into an intimacy from which they never recovered. So I invite you to drop into the rabbit hole with myself and each other here for the next few minutes. So a little bit about the magic of the human heart. It's a pretty amazing and complex structure. The blue vessels that you see on the left side of the image are where the blood returns from the whole body into the heart and goes into what's called the left atrium. The right atrium. And then the right atrium feeds into the right ventricle, and then blood gets squirted out through these purple vessels, the pulmonary trunk, into the lungs, gets oxygenated, then comes back through these pulmonary veins into the left atrium, then into the left ventricle, and then back out to the systemic circulation through the aorta, which is that big red arch up at the top. And so there's this very complex system of bringing blood from all over the body in through this portal, essentially, reoxygenating it and nutrifying it and sending it back out. And so there's this constant process going on. And the blood that's actually circulating through the heart itself is not nourishing the heart. So the heart actually has a whole series of vessels that nourish it itself. And here's a pretty intricate picture of the vasculature that's actually nourishing the heart itself. So there's this really amazing web that feeds the heart muscle. I just thought that was kind of a fun image. And so the cardiovascular system, again, pushes life-giving blood out to every extremity, every little last cell in the body, and then returns blood that has been deoxygenated and has absorbed toxins. It passes it through the liver cleanses it, and then the heart sends it back to the lungs for oxygenation again. Kind of an interesting image of the heart tree, I'm calling it, with all these branches going out into the body. And then another image of a heart tree. So I want to talk a little bit about the awesomeness of the human heart in its developmental stages. So initially, we are essentially this little pancake structure that you see on the left side. We start as a single-celled organism and multiply into this blastocyst, and then eventually become this pancake-like organism. And you can see these little red spots up at the top where the heart tubes are starting to form. And the heart tubes are actually formed from tissue that also eventually goes on to form the gut tissue. So there's this very interesting connection between when you're feeling stuff in your heart or your emotional place and what you're feeling in your gut. So I'm sure you've all been there where you're like, oh, things are just twisted in the belly, but there's this early embryonic physiological connection that's pretty interesting. So again, this is the pancake looking from top down on the left, and then looking at the left side, we have this, the embryonic disc is essentially what you're looking at, which is the pancake on the left. And you can see there's this tiny little nook there to the left side of that where we have the heart tube and the heart cavity. And this is at day 18 in embryogenesis, so it's pretty early on. And so it's one of the earliest structures to form. Here's some cool pictures where we still look like a fish-type organism. And we can see that at day 20, the heart tubes are starting to fuse. So they've kind of seated themselves on either side of that pancake structure that you saw. And now they're starting to come together. And then they actually fuse day 21, day 22. You're starting to see the formation of this other structure as this unified tube. So this is happening really fast, and it's really pretty amazing. And then we get what's called the heart snail, or the snailian, as has become a term around my new house. And so the heart tubes fuse, and we have this unique structure that I just think looks like a snail. And you can see these kind of primordial structures. You can notice that the ventricle is actually above the atrium in this heart snail. And what happens is eventually there's going to be a twisting and a folding that orients the heart into its current orientation, where the atrium is at the superior portion and the ventricle is at the bottom of the heart. There's also another heart snailian. And then here's a more complex picture of what I was just describing. So we have the heart tubes at day 20 up there. So there's, again, the pancake plate. There's the heart tubes. They're fusing at day 21. Day 22, we have this fused structure. The heart snailian at day 23 starts to do this twisting. So we have this spiraling inside the heart. This tube is spiraling itself around and forming this eventually folded structure that gives rise to what we know as the human heart now. So 35 days, it's still a bit not fully orchestrated, but you can see how this has happened, this really unique twisting. So I thought that was interesting in a variety of ways. Again, back to the gut tube being related to the heart tube, and those structures arising out of the same basic tissue. That being pretty interesting, and then also how we go through this spiraling. And in the energetic system of the chakras, this is the center of our being, is this heart structure. And there's a nice image of that. So another pretty picture of the actual heart chakra itself, which emanates the color green. And it's one of the reasons, I think, why when we're in nature and we entrain with the natural world, it's really soothing and good for the heart, whether that's your physiological heart or your emotional heart or your spiritual or mental heart. That's part of like seeing green and being around green helps with the resonance. And some of the associations with the heart itself, connection and growth. And then intimacy. Into me, you see. I'd like to think of the heart as an organ of intimacy, if not the main organ of intimacy. It might feel like that sometimes. A quote, the opposite of loneliness is not togetherness, it's intimacy. Some people have made these wonderful intimacy maps, if you're a little bit more needing a visual or intellectual oriented view. And what helps us to develop intimacy, sharing, understanding, and deepening a commitment to be in that process of sharing and understanding. So what is the key to unlocking this gateway to the heart? This intimate place? Can anyone tell me?
Vulnerability!
Vulnerability! Hooray! Vulnerability. Okay. So, yeah. Just ahead. Which can sometimes feel like, that. So I wanted to do a little exercise with you guys. I'd like you to pair up, preferably with someone that you aren't in an intimate partnership with or don't know incredibly intimately well just yet, if that's possible, in this room. So we're going to take a few minutes, and I'll help you with time. And I just want you to sit facing each other. Don't be shy. Come on. Get it together. Come on, guys. You can do it. You can do it. And if you obviously know someone intimately in this room, it's okay because there are so many of us. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is to actually spend 2 moments just in silence, just being with each other's eyes. Okay? So remember to breathe and just be with each other. And I'll let you know when 2 moments are up. It might feel like a lifetime. It might feel like a short time. But just be there. Great, thank you. So I'd like you to take a moment now and be with some questions with your partner. The first question is, what is something that you would like to be forgiven for? And the second question is, what is something you would like to be acknowledged for? So whoever wants to go first, go ahead, and you'll have about a minute and a half, and then I'll tell you when to switch, okay? So what is something you'd like to be forgiven for and acknowledged for? And then the partner who's hearing, do say back to them, you are forgiven for XYZ, you are acknowledged for XYZ, okay? Go ahead. Okay, go ahead and switch. So finishing up and taking a moment to thank your partner and thank yourself. Great. Thank you guys so much. You all survived 5 minutes. Awesome. I wanted to share one other quote with you. often vulnerability in our culture has gotten a really bad reputation, right? It's like, oh, you're weak, or if you're crying, it's not okay. And Brene Brown offers a much different perspective on it. Vulnerability is not weakness, and that myth is profoundly dangerous. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. So again, this concept that vulnerability is this key for the lock in the heart to intimacy. And if we kill it off, we're really, I think, killing off a significant portion of the gift of being alive at all. I want to share a little bit with you about why I chose to come to this conversation today. This is my nephew, Bennett. He is just over 10 months old, and he was born on December 21st, 2012. Just past dawn on the East Coast, with Pluto right on his sun and on his ascendant, poor kid. He I was actually at Esalen. I was down here for staff week last year, and I was driving back to San Francisco. I had come down for a completely insane rock star, like 24-hour come party with my friends and drive back and get on a plane and go to the East Coast. And so I was right around Gilroy when I got a call from my brother, and it was about 10:30 p.m. on Thursday night, and I'm like, what are they doing awake? It's 1:30 in the morning on the East Coast, and he says, Jess thinks her water broke, and da-da-da. And I said, well, put her on the phone. And so she got on the phone, and I said, yeah, it sounds like your water broke, and you need to go to the hospital and be ready. Like, Bennett was due February 5th. So I said, this could be challenging because he's not fully cooked. So they went to the hospital, and yes, the water had broken, and she had already planned to have a C-section because she had some complications with her lungs. They didn't want her to go through labor. So they had the C-section on the morning of December 21st. And all that night I was kind of in and out of this haze. And they didn't know the sex of the baby, but probably for about 6 months I was pretty sure it was a boy. And through the night I kept dreaming about my brother holding a baby boy and Jessica's father, who had passed on, holding a baby boy. And so I was like, yeah, he's coming in. Okay, this is great. And so baby Bennett came in, and I flew to the East Coast the next day. And he was having a little bit of a hard time breathing, which is normal for a premature newborn. And they had been giving him surfactant, which is the soapy stuff that lines our lungs and helps us to breathe and have appropriate oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. And they had him on a little bit of a respirator, and he was doing okay. By the time I got there, I guess this was Sunday now, 2 days later, he was breathing okay on this ventilator machine. And then as the night went on, he just started to take a nosedive. And my brother called me about 11 o'clock that night and said, he's not doing well. They have to transfer him. We're going to take him to Yale. I don't know what's going on. And at this point, they had been already awake for, the better part of 60 hours. And they had just gone through the school shooting in Connecticut last year. It was a week before Bennett's birth. So they had been processing students in their school, losing siblings, and just all this. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, my brother called me back and said, I need you to come here now. And I said, okay. So I got up. I was delirious. Dragged my parents out of bed. I said, we're going now. And we got to Yale Hospital. My brother was, he's like a 6'5", 250-pound, like football coaching beast. And he just collapsed, like right in my arms. And I was like, what is going on? And he's like, we have to make a decision to put him on this, whether or not to put him on this machine called ECMO. And so I had done some research. Well, he had called and told me that, and I had done some research on the way to the hospital. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, like this is really serious. And so what ECMO is, it stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It basically drains the blood from the body and puts it through an artificial lung and oxygenates the blood and puts it back into the heart. And so it's a way of bypassing the lungs so that the lungs can actually rest and not have to do the function of air exchange. And so when I got there, I knew the gravity of this, having read the medical stuff, and he was a mess. And it was like, well, what do you do? And this is Christmas Eve. And it's like, yeah, of course you're going to put the kid on the machine, right? You're not just like let the kid die on the respirator that they can't turn up anymore. So this was how we spent Christmas. This is Bennett, and that's his mother's hand. And at this point, he's completely sedated and has opiates and antibiotics and heparin running through his system. And what's hard to see, but up there in the right-hand corner, that little red inlet, that's his blood being sucked out of his body and put through this machine and being put back in. And this required 3 people on 24-hour surveillance to make sure that the machine didn't mess up, that he didn't go down. I mean, it was just like full on. So this was how I spent Christmas last year, going to Yale Hospital every day and just doing energy work and sneaking in essential oils and praying over this little man. And then on December 29th, which is my brother's birthday, he came off ECMO. And this is probably one of my favorite pictures of him. Just taking in the wonder of a daffodil. And he's doing really awesome now. He's growing, he's teething, he's eating and crawling and starting to pull himself up. So that's my little share in a vulnerable space with all of you. We've got just a few minutes left for questions. Thank you. Or comments. Yeah, or if you want to share anything that came up for you as you did the exercise or anything. Yeah.
So during those intimate moments, it feels like the heart has that open experience.
Mm-hmm.
The warmth. Do you know anything about the science of that, or what's going on?
In terms of physiologically?
Yeah.
Well, there's some research around entrainment in terms of the actual heartbeat getting into sync with another person. I bet that the brainwaves would actually sync up as well, and I don't know, but I would imagine that probably potentially even things like blood pressure and pulse could entrain as well. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Lydia.
What do you think the relationship is between vulnerability and not being attached to an outcome? Because I know that as my mom was passing, that in order to stay close to her, I had to become okay with whether she stayed through that day or if she was gone by that day. Mm-hmm. And if I was attached, I'd be protecting myself more from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if it was, but then it also seems like with Bennett, like the desire for him to make it through would also bring in vulnerability. So I don't know if there's a relationship there or not, or yeah, I don't know. Like it seems like you feel vulnerable because you want an outcome of togetherness, but then it's almost like you also have to accept that any way it goes, you are together with something, and in that way, it's like a trust that you build so that you can open it all. I don't know.
It's a real interesting double-edged sword, and I mean, in my experience with Bennett, it was like when I really got the reality of the situation, I was like, holy shit, like this is about as bad as it can get. And I'm optimistic. And I'm also realistic. Like, we could be going to a funeral this week. That's one potential outcome here. And, being the pesky California witch doctor sister that I am, I was really on top of those doctors too, being like, I want to see his labs, and how's this going? And are you, like triple checking everything that I could instigate while I was there? But they were on their game. They really were. And they were very accommodating. And it was, it was interesting to just be dancing that fine line. I mean, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm not remotely trained is the word I'm trying for. Trained, translated, transferred, transmuted. I'm not trained in high, invasive emergency medicine. And I question our desires to prolong life to such extent that we do. And when it's my nephew laying on the table, I want him to live. So I'm sort of attached to him living, because it's going to really suck if he doesn't. And it's also really like, wow, this is crazy. So I'm really vulnerable to all of it right now. So I don't know if I'm answering anything, but just I think dancing on the edge. It's all of it. Yeah. We're pretty much at time. Is there one more burning comment, question, thought? Eve, Jess.
About, the birth process. His birth process was intense.
Yeah.
So what do you think this will create, considering the lungs are right next to the heart and his blood is out in a big heart giving oxygen? Like, this is part of
his experience. Yeah, I actually just sent his mom, she's a psychologist. I actually sent her Psychology of the Future by Stan. I thought you should get a nice introduction to the perinatal matrices and what that might have been like, and whatnot. So, I personally feel like he's going to have to deal with some trauma that I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, the first 6 months of his life, I didn't put any of those pictures up, but he looked like a deer in headlights. Every picture he was like, and I was like, holy shit, he's scared, And I get it. And he's alive. He chose life. So I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I'm going to be there. I sent him a mushroom-shaped rattle. So if there's anything I can do to help him out, I will. Jess, and then, no, we're good. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Awesome.